At the Alaska summit, the air felt heavier than the snowbound sky. Putin, shoulders square and eyes cold, repeated an old demand with fresh steel: full control of Donbas. For him, Ukraine's industrial heartland is not just territory. It is leverage, memory, and unfinished history. Meanwhile, Kyiv's response was unwavering. Zelenskyy, hardened by years of war, rejected any notion of ceding land. For Ukrainians, giving up Donetsk and Luhansk is not strategy. It is surrender. It is the erasure of sacrifice, of soldiers buried beneath trenches that scar the Donbas fields. Polls inside Ukraine reflect this stubborn resolve. 3 out of 4 citizens reject territorial compromise. The figures speak like shouts. They say, "We will not be partitioned. We will not trade sovereignty for quiet." In Kyiv apartments and Kharkiv shelters, that defiance is more instinct than ideology. To understand why Donbas is so fiercely contested, you must walk back to 2014. That year, Viktor Yanukovych, Kremlin's loyal son of Donetsk, fled after mass protests toppled his rule. Russia seized Crimea swiftly, but it was Donbas where Moscow planted a longer, bleeding war. The mines and steel plants once fueled the USSR. Stalin sent migrants eastward, layering Donbas with Russian-speaking roots. Streets carried Russian sounds. Loyalty bent east. Moscow financed separatists, armed them, fed them with television stories. In 2022, Putin launched his special military operation under the banner of protecting Donbas. He called it genocide prevention, though no evidence stood behind the charge. In reality, Donbas was his pretext. Within hours, Russian tanks rolled toward Kyiv, seeking not just protection but dominance. Today, Russia controls nearly 90% of Donbas. Luhansk is fully occupied. Donetsk is mostly absorbed. Yet Ukraine clings to fortified towns: Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, Avdiivka. More than 250,000 civilians remain in the remaining pockets, living with shells above and shortages within. The Russian public was slower to embrace Donbas. Before the invasion, surveys showed indifference. Crimea carried pride. Donbas carried smoke, coal industry, and little symbolism. But state television rewrote apathy into obligation. Now polls show majority support for annexation. Trump, in Alaska, listened to Putin's assurances with an expression that mixed admiration and calculation. His followers, especially in conservative U.S. towns, see Donbas not as geography but as proof of strength. To them, Putin defends heritage. To them, Zelenskyy is globalist theater. This thinking echoes in American diners and rallies. A steelworker in Ohio told Truthory he admires Putin's unapologetic toughness. For him, Ukraine is distant yet symbolic. He compared Donbas to U.S. coal towns, proud, abandoned, misunderstood. To him, Putin claims what Washington forgot: dignity of industry. Stories like these ripple across Trump's base. They frame Ukraine as a distraction, not a defense of democracy. America First rhetoric folds Donbas into a narrative of wasted taxpayer dollars. To them, Zelenskyy's struggle feels noble yet irrelevant while Putin appears decisive. Truth bends across oceans, but history insists on being remembered. In the 1970s, détente coexisted with proxy wars. Moscow's appetite grew each time the West blinked. Analysts warned that conceding Donbas now could resemble Chamberlain's Munich moment, an uneasy peace purchased by carving land from the unwilling. The lesson still echoes. Inside Ukraine, resistance feels personal. A teacher in Sloviansk told Truthory she sleeps with a bag by her bed. Not because she wants escape, but because she refuses to leave students. She teaches history under candlelight, explaining to teenagers why Donbas is not a bargaining chip. In Luhansk, memories of 2014 still sting. Families recall masked men declaring people's republics overnight. Streets filled with checkpoints, schools divided by propaganda. For many, betrayal tasted domestic, neighbors siding with Russia, childhood friends joining separatists. The scars linger like ink that refuses to wash. Putin insists Donbas guarantees security. He offered Trump a deal: give me Donetsk and Luhansk and I'll freeze elsewhere. To his critics, that sounds like a thief asking to keep the jewels already stolen, promising not to break into the next room. Yet, Ukraine knows this logic well. Concede Donbas, and Kharkiv becomes next. Yield Donetsk, and Kyiv shakes. The front line is not just geography. It is principle. Each compromise is a seed of collapse. Zelenskyy's line, "No territory surrendered," is not stubborn pride. It is survival doctrine. Ordinary Russians, meanwhile, feel the war differently. In Rostov, a cafe owner told Truthory she supports Putin because her television insists Donbas is our people. She repeats the slogans dutifully, wiping tables as state news blares in the background. Loyalty sounds rehearsed, almost scripted, echoing through her modest cafe. Yet her life tells another story. Her teenage son sneaks home late, dodging draft patrols that roam streets after dark. Each knock at the door tightens her chest. Fear mixes with reluctant patriotism. Propaganda may guide her tongue, but her trembling hands reveal the truth. American politicians split hard. Trump claims he could end the war, often hinting at giving Russia what it wants. His supporters cheer, equating diplomacy with dominance. Democrats, however, warns that appeasement feeds autocracy. Each leader pulls Donbas into U.S. politics as if it were Ohio farmland. History again interjects. In 1945, coal from Donbas rebuilt the Soviet Union's war-shattered economy. Stalin called it our black gold. In 1991, miners there led strikes that rattled Moscow, demanding dignity after Soviet collapse. Donbas has never been quiet. It has always been power's contested furnace. A Ukrainian mother from Kramatorsk told Truthory her son died defending trenches near Bakhmut. She showed us his last text. "Don't worry, I'm holding my line." To her, discussions in Alaska mean little. Donbas is not negotiation. It is blood, earth, and a son who never returned. Markets too watch Donbas nervously. Grain shipments stall when rockets fall near Sloviansk. Energy prices spike when Donetsk's coal mines flicker offline. Traders in New York read charts. Families in Cairo feel bread prices soar. The Donbas front lines stretch invisibly across every kitchen table in the world. Putin's appetite rarely ends where he first claims. Analysts call Donbas a stepping stone. He already eyes Kherson, Zaporizhia, buffer zones in Kharkiv. A former Kremlin insider told Truthory, his hunger grows with each victory. Donbas, therefore, is not destination. It is launchpad. For many Trump supporters, Donbas is not simply a region on a distant map. It is a mirror reflecting America's own decline. They see in Ukraine's war a pattern they know well. Factories shuttered, industries forgotten, and working families left to carry the burden while elites debate ideology. To them, Russia's claims sound less like aggression and more like defense. They argue that NATO's eastward push cornered Moscow, leaving Putin with little choice but to act. In this reading, Donbas is not conquest but preservation, and a stand against encirclement that resonates with their own sense of betrayal. President Trump amplifies this sentiment, often suggesting land swapping. Let's listen to him.
Bothered by the fact that Zelenskyy was saying, well, I have to get constitutional approval. I mean, he's got approval to go into war and kill everybody, but he needs approval to do a land swap because there'll be some land swapping going on. I know that through Russia and through conversations with everybody to the good, for the good of Ukraine. Good stuff, not bad stuff. Also, some bad stuff for both. So there's good and there's bad.
His words, warmly received by his audience, are understood as a willingness to give Russia what it wants, Donetsk and Luhansk. Supporters cheer, believing strength lies not in endless spending but decisive deals. Their sympathy with Russia, then, is not treachery but alignment with what they see as common sense. Why bleed American taxpayers for trenches in Donbas while Ohio towns rust? Why fund distant borders while neglecting their own? In Trump's push to get a deal, they see relief, clarity, and justice. But Zelenskyy frames Donbas as freedom's litmus test. He reminds allies that if Ukraine falls, borders across Europe wobble. Truthory asked him once if compromise is possible. His answer was immediate. What would you trade of your home? The kitchen? The bedroom? Or just the children's room? In the U.S., veterans see Donbas differently. One Iraq war sergeant told Truthory he sees echoes of Fallujah. Block-by-block fights, civilians caught between. He said, if we give up Donbas, those soldiers die for nothing. This is why Donbas matters beyond maps. It is a crucible where propaganda, history, and human survival collide. It is Putin's demand, Zelenskyy's defiance, Trump's applause line, and a mother's gravestone. The Alaska summit did not settle it. Donbas is not yet a homeland. It remains a battlefield of claims and sacrifices. While the efforts to push for a deal gain apace, the question lingers. Who do you think should have Donbas and why?